Help me! Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Frame Rate, where we are flies. Because you clicked the title of the episode, so you already know what we're talking about. And I don't sound crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy at all. With me, as always, I'm Michael Swaim. And this is the show where we rate frames. But with me, as always, is my name, Damie. Abe Epperson.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I'm Abe Epperson. You're Michael Swaim. We rate frames. Everyone's got it.
It all rhymes. There's names and names. And speaking of names, we have a third name for you to memorize, and that is as follows: :
Do I say my name?
Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Dave.
All right.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
I guess that's all we get.
I'm very excited.
David Christopher Bell in full.
Hi.
And
It's on the title. It's
true.
yeah. They know what's up.
I'm glad that we've accomplished everything that someone can read from a title.
You'll have a parenthetical credit. That's true.
I think we did a great job.
We're not wasting their time at all.
It's our first time doing this with every single member being remote, because if you're a Small Bean follower, I guess if you're a small bean, I should say, you know that I took a new job that involved me moving away. So this is our first fully remote recording experience. Hopefully you don't notice much of a difference, but I think I've already proven that wrong.
It's freeing. You get used to it because you don't have to wear pants. You don't have to look nice. You don't have to look people in the eyes. There's something very freeing about doing it remote. Once you get like the pacing of not seeing like visual cues of another person,
That's what's tricky.
yeah, you do get used to it though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't move my finger fast enough to mute my cam feed because we're doing this over Google Hangouts, and I was like, I look like shit. I'm in my robe and nothing else. Yeah, I did not expect Dave to see my video feed at any point, and I just had to quickly.
You looked fine.
It's fitting for the topic.
It is.
Because we are covering. Oh, and I should say this is part of our patron requested tier called Pick the Flick. I always say Flick the Pick for some reason, but this was a picked flick by a patron, and it is 1986's The Fly, famously with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, and not to be confused with the one that I quoted at the top of the episode.
Yes, not to be confused with what I would argue is the way better one.
You think the old black and white The Fly is way better than the 1986 Cronenberg Fly?
Yes, it's also not black and white. It's like
it is in my memory. Okay.
Yeah, it's 1958. It's I think way better, like above and beyond.
I hate to do this
Okay.
in public, but I don't trust you. I listen to every Gamefully Employed episode, and I often get burned by your movie recommendations.
Well, would you like me to explain my work?
So exactly. I'm like, I need you to unpack that. Explain why before I'll believe you. Carte blanche.
It's the horror the horror is way better because the premise behind the original film, it's more of a mystery. It starts with the death of her husband. Right away, they make it that it's a husband and wife with a kid. So the emotional connection is immediately better, and it's more horrific in the sense that she helps Mercy kill her husband, and then the movie is Vincent Price trying to figure out why that happened. And it's a lot more psychologically horrifying because the whole time they're trying to figure this out, she keeps obsessing over flies in the room. If she sees a fly, she's like, we have to get that fly, and no one knows why. And it's because she knows somewhere out there's a fly with her husband's head. And that's so much freakier as a core premise. The idea of they swapped bodies and heads, and it's like it's like this lost animal that you're trying to find, but everybody's swatting flies around you, and you can't quite explain it, and everybody thinks you're crazy. Like it's a lot more of that aspect than just look how gross he's becoming.
Yes. Okay. So to get to strike at the core of this, because it is a Cronenberg film and one of the early ones. And if you don't know Cronenberg, Abe, help me out. Jacob's Ladder, Scanners.
Jacob's Ladder.
Videodrome.
Didn't he do the effects for Jacob's Ladder? Am I wrong?
It's just a funny one to start with.
Why? Why?
Classic
Because-
Cronenberg. Jacob's
Because
Ladder.
Cronenberg is known for I don't know, creature. Yeah, he's
there's a-
Videodrome. He started in a certain place, but I don't know. He's kind of known for creature features and sci-fi and stuff. It's
Naked
just
Lunch.
interesting. Scanners, The Dead Zone,
Existence, which did
what
Matrix
else am I
before the
trying to think
Matrix.
of?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Existence,
Yeah.
History of Violence. Yeah, so
Crash, where everyone,
Oh,
the people
yeah.
and the main characters can only have sexual gratification during a dramatic car crash, which
Yeah.
sounds very
That's an
inconvenient.
inconvenient fetish
Yeah.
for sure.
right, yeah, he's definitely infatuated with horror. He's infatuated with terror, and he seemed to, especially in the 80s and earlier, to be entirely fascinated with creature feature, or at least from how we understand it, some kind of big set piece that is horrifying to look at. He's
Yeah.
kind of, chilled out in his older days.
Oh yeah, has
you
he?
know?
Okay.
Well, I mean, Eastern Promises and History of Violence. He just replaced, all that
yeah.
with, Vigo. So
History of Violence, I haven't seen Eastern Promises, but my understanding is it's similar. The periods where violence finally does come, he still goes at it with a similar gusto. This guy loves not just gore and blood and killing, although that's what's mostly in Eastern Promises and History of Violence, but
yeah.
Cronenberg has a very specific fetish, I would call it. I don't know if it's just a creative vein that he minds, but it really seems like a legit fetish. I don't he's weirdly obsessed with the idea of flesh flowing like water and melding with other flesh. The word flesh is 800 times in this screenplay. You don't need to say flesh this much, even
Yeah.
in a movie about a guy who becomes a fly.
Yeah, I think of flesh and I think of slothing off.
Sloughing flesh.
Sloughing. Yeah. I think
See, if
of-
Cronenberg was listening, he'd be coming right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and rubbing
Yeah.
it into his flesh.
Yeah.
And
Fucking
let's
crazy
move
Canadian.
on. Yeah. Oh, while we're talking about cum flesh, I looked it up and want to thank specifically Aaron Booten. Thank you for picking the flick and having us talk about Goldblum's cum flesh.
Yeah.
But basically, it's just to fill people
freak.
in who don't know either story. The original movie, 50s film, in both cases, they're about a scientist who creates teleportation. And in both cases, the twist is, what if a fly flew in during the teleportation process? In the old movie, and I gotta say, I love the scientific naivete of the 50s, that they'd be like, well, I'll tell you what would happen. The fly head would go on the guy's body, and the guy's head would go on the fly
Bada
body.
bing, bada boom.
That's science, my friend.
He also has a fly arm, to be fair.
So he
Yeah.
has a fly head and one fly arm in the
Yeah.
original? Okay.
Yeah, I also want to, not to take objection, but just to, kind of weigh in on
Yeah,
Dave's
please.
Initial kind of, not critique. I don't even know what you just talked for a bit and I just sat there and
I
listened,
zoned
whatever
out.
the fuck that was. But I don't think there needs to be a comparison, although obviously we like to do that as a society. They're two vastly different things.
They're pretty
Yes.
different. Yeah.
To me, the first one is the kernel of the story. It's definitely taking from Kafka's Metamorphosis and a lot of things, as this is, because it's the same source material. Ultimately, though, this film is a triumph because of loudly different things, and by that I mean it's Wallace's show, and Wallace will be a name that you, Chris Wallace, who's the guy who did the actual fly creature, and is the makeup artist and won the Oscar for it. Like, so that's what makes The Fly amazing, is that it's like, this shit was a low budget. They knew what they were doing in terms of, it's like basically a drama play with 3 people. Obviously, there's different roles. And there's a few other, random events.
I wanted
that
to,
happen.
it's extremely stripped down. Watching
It's
it this
so
time,
stripped
my
down.
main takeaway was like, holy shit, this has like 4 locations and 3 characters. There's this could be a play if you had a good
Right.
enough effects or costume person.
And it was shot in Toronto, I want to say, and it had a budget of $15 million, and it made a box office of $60 million, which is, especially for a small
400%
something like that
profit.
in the
Yeah.
86, like that's pretty damn good. And it's made a shit ton after that because it's a cold hit. The reason you watch The Fly 1986 version and the 58 version are 2 completely different things. One is, I think, as Dave said very
don't know
well,
if I
like
completely
psychological
agree.
horror.
Yeah, I want to hear Dave rebut this when you're
Yeah,
done.
rebut.
But go ahead.
but in.
No, keep going.
Rebutted.
Keep going.
Yeah,
No,
it's
finish
not
the
a
thought.
full rebuttal or
Complete
anything.
thought, end of sentence. The Fly, you watch it for 2 reasons.
Well, what can you identify? Like, so the first one is true horror. You watch it to be scared. Is that
Psychological horror, yeah.
It's also body horror though. It starts with his head crushed in the press at their factory, and if you go back and watch that scene where she assists her husband in crushing his own fly head, she has to crush it twice to make sure he's dead, and they don't show it. And that's so much more horrifying. That scene where she crushes her husband's head twice, his arms twitching, way more viscerally horrific than
and you're
anything
talking the
in the remake.
50s, which is nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy
But I would-
early
same
for
with
that
the-
level of grim horror.
Yeah, the spiderweb scene too.
Right,
It's,
the
the makeup
spiderweb
effect
scene.
isn't as good, but the expression on his face, his little pitiful voice, and then the fact that he gets mercy killed with a rock, and it's just like, that's chilling. It's I find it so much more on a visual level chilling. Like,
But wait, hold on. But is that
Okay.
body horror though? Especially, I mean, the spiderweb scene I can see, but because they don't show it, because it's all about the terror of thinking about doing this to your spouse, as opposed to
What if you
and
were a fly? You'd
and
be
the
so
editing
at the
around
mercy
it
of everything.
versus the-
That's scary. Yeah.
it is body horror because it's the same premise, which is that he's horribly disfigured from an experiment, and you can't tell where he begins and the fly ends.
But
Because
I-
he seems
yeah.
to have this personality as both the fly and as the person.
But I would say that's why the 80s one, even if both are body horror, the 80s one, I think you'd grant, is even more obsessed with the body part of body horror.
Yeah.
Because the premise is explicitly different. Like, to me, the fact that my head and my arm became fly head and arm is horrifying, but it's discreet.
Right.
In the 86 Cronenberg Fly, Goldblum's DNA, it takes a more Jurassic Park view of the situation. The fly DNA invades your DNA, so you become a man fly, which they end up calling Brundle-Fly because his name is Seth Brundle, in a way that can't even fully be predicted. And it's not like you just plug a fly head onto your body. You
Right.
become a again flesh soup of
Hybrid, yeah.
Cronenbergian fly man. Like, you're a bizarre, like, avant-garde mix of man and fly. And I guess I want to give Cronenberg credit in the body horror genre, because I feel like that's what we mean when we say body horror, is that your DNA is going to be invaded by something. Like, it goes back to the Kafka story, the Metamorphosis, where he becomes a cockroach, was my first experience with what I'd call body horror, where you're like, this is horrifying because it's so gross. Who
Right.
thought of this? What's wrong with them?
What's wrong with them? Why do they exist? Yeah.
I guess comparing the two, because you kind of have to compare. At least I do in my mind, because it's a remake.
yeah, they're called the same thing.
Yeah, is that it reminds me of, say, the remake of The Haunting versus the original, where the original doesn't show much, whereas the remake is like big CGI ghosts, and I I think it ruins it.
Oh, well,
Like-
I appreciate anyone stumping for the power of human imagination. I definitely think that's undervalued right now.
Right.
But Cronenberg is not that. I appreciate that Cronenberg is being Cronenberg, and it's very interesting that Cronenberg's obsession is not Hitchcockian. It's almost anti-Hitchcockian. It's not saying,
Right.
whoa, think about what's happening off camera. Your brain can imagine something more horrible than I could ever show. Cronenberg is like, I bet we could show it. No, let's show it.
I think kind of aptly, there's something that there was a Sinister Image interview in '87 where we actually get Vincent Price talking to Jeff Goldblum and specifically about what he thought about The Fly, which was that after it was remade, Jeff Goldblum wrote him a letter saying, I hope you like it as much as I liked yours. Price then responded that he thought
No.
he went to see it and he described it as it's wonderful right up to a certain point. It went a little too far.
Interesting.
But I think that that's the difference between that's a generational difference.
But especially
I think they
coming
all
from Vincent
embrace-
Price, who dedicated his life to being scary. He thinks
Right.
you went too far. Yeah.
That's the thing, but I think that's the reason I call it a generational difference is that like the newer generations often the newer generations often take what the older generations do and they like refine a very specific aspect of it because they fall in love with these pictures and then they go like, but like what if we did a crazy cool version of it that is like now with this specifically the body horror stuff, specifically with like special effects and makeup because the technology is new and I have new tools to use. And Price is not like being a curmudgeon. I think Price is being very smart here when he says it's wonderful to a certain point because he knows that the heart of the story is still in play. He's just saying it went too far. I think in his opinion, I'm putting this in,
Right.
I'm putting words in his mouth, but it's just like, I think that what he means when it went too far, because it does go far, and I think we all, at a certain point, we all know what that point is. It's like at the climax, like you literally have like that, like you said, that cum flesh just slothing off.
Yeah,
his
for me
face.
it was his eyeballs melting and flowing out of his skull.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
believably.
It was an awesome shot.
It's an
and
amazing
it's
effect.
awesome, and it's different,
Well-
and it's fine.
This is the question I
It's
have
fine.
for you
It's
guys,
fine. I just got to inject this at this point. Produced by Mel Brooks, this film.
Who
Mel
didn't he
Brooks-
keep like he did with a lot of films of this era? Didn't he keep his name out of it in
Yes.
order to like make
That's-
sure people would be?
He did like Hell
comedy,
Comes to
Mel Brooks.
Frogtown as well, right?
Mel Brooks is yes, he did. Mel Brooks is underappreciated as far as he really loved film and not just the genre of films he made. He loved all film, and he spent hella money supporting edgy experimental film
God,
and
what a-
not putting his name on it, which
what
is
a
pretty
great
cool.
guy.
Yeah, it's pretty
What
rad.
a fucking great guy.
Yeah. So yeah, silent producer of The Fly, Mel Brooks. But
Nice.
anyway, you were saying.
I had a question. Do you guys? Here's my issue with body horror. Are you guys scared of body horror? Do you feel fear watching body horror?
Well, so that would be like Hellraiser has some body horror. What
The
else
Thing,
would be?
which is
The Thing would
objectively
be
an
body
amazing
horror.
movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
But are you scared?
No, I'm not scared of anything,
No.
Dave.
Well,
No, but okay. Do you know anybody who's scared?
Yeah,
I
everyone else.
I see what you're getting at, and I agree in the sense that
I agree,
I am
yeah.
scared of some types of horror movies. And it is true that the types of horror movies that really scare me lean way more towards the off-camera trick. Like,
Yes.
what scares me as an adult with a fully functioning brain is going like, I know this version is fake, but it's a metaphor for getting AIDS and dying. I'm thinking of It Follows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that really could happen, and it really would be so fucking scary. And I work myself up and I get scared. Seeing a guy's head explode because a fly head is growing from the inside is gross, but doesn't scare me because it's so abstract. Like,
It's
that's
awesome.
not going to happen to me. In fact, it's cool. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Like,
you're hitting
that's-
on a good point, Dave. The implications of a shot can be more horrifying and psychologically terrifying than a single haunting image of, like
something gross.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your arm in this film, like the famous scene where you're arm wrestling so hard that the guy's forearm
Yeah.
snaps
think-
in half and the bone sticks out. That
Right.
makes me jump and
And-
cringe. But
right.
it doesn't make me as scared as finding out that someone who seemed like they really loved another character actually was only using them, because I'm like, that could happen to me. That would
I
be
think
so sad,
That's because, and the three of us being screenwriters, we all know that it takes a lot more work from the screenwriting appeal to get one to work versus the other. So one person, it's like a setup of dominoes that kind of falls into place, and then you go, oh fuck, that's a good
Right.
screenplay, and
That's
then
a good
another one
moment.
is to go and then hopefully what a workshop will take care of it and will be fucking awesome. They both can coexist. I'm not saying anyone's arguing that they don't, but one is like a screenwriter's opinion of how
A
looking at it
practical
like a
effects
filmmaker,
person.
where it's
Yeah.
okay, we're a collective and everyone's kind of bringing something to the fold. So I don't think it's a conversation more about what works, because they both
because I think
work
otherwise
on
you're just
different
arguing
people.
that writing is more important than building a cool rig of latex that shoots pus out. And I would argue we can't really prove which of those things is better or more important than the
For
other
different
thing.
people. Yeah.
I would-
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
different disciplines.
But that was the realization I came upon with this film, is that unlike, say, The Thing, which has plenty of this body horror effects,
Right.
this film, when you take away the practical effects, I don't think it's a very good story.
I thought it was weirdly. It's like, okay,
bare
so
bones.
first of all, this movie cuts out the fucking second everything's resolved. And I mean resolved in a very concrete way.
I was
like,
very surprised. I was like, oh.
the fly's dead, she lives, he lives, but he's injured. Credits. And
Oh,
it starts
yes.
with the fly just going, hey, you should come back to my lab. We should talk more and have sex potentially. And
He brings her to a warehouse.
it has almost
Yeah, he does.
It has almost no plot points, and from a modern perspective, Gina Davis's behavior is insane. It's
Yes.
a guy she's never met that she's trying to interview at a science convention who's obviously crazy, or at least super
Yeah.
intense. Goes no, come back to my lab. And she's like, fine. And they get there and it's like a filthy alley warehouse that seems abandoned. And she's like, this is all still fine. And it turns out it is all fine in the sense that it's not what we in 2019 would be like, is this some kind of horrible assault scenario playing out? No. A bunch of red flags around that are in play.
I
but
love
no.
that. As soon as they're quote unquote together, he's all he can think about. He's like, yeah, that's really cool. Love you, baby. Get in the pod.
Yeah, just get in the pod.
Get in the pod.
I also, who keeps selling Jeff Goldblum baboons? Where is he getting?
Where's his baboon? Yeah.
I love specifically the second baboon
got
that he
baboon
teleports successfully that doesn't die. He names, he has banter with, he's come to love it. I could understand him turning a bunch of baboons inside out if he doesn't bond with the baboons, but he does bond with them and turn them inside out. So I don't understand how Goldblum thinks, really, or what Seth Brundle's inner workings are.
I like to
It's
imagine
kind of-
he's like a real Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
sociopathic, but yeah.
It's kind of a nod to the original. In the original, it's a cat. He doesn't turn it inside out, and it's funnier. He's testing the machine, and he successfully transfers something, and the cat walks in the room, and he just slowly looks over at the cat, and then he just picks the cat up and shoves it in,
Yeah.
and the cat doesn't come back on the other side, and instead you just hear echoing meows from some
from
shadow
the
world.
afterlife.
Yeah.
And that's it. He's just like sent the cat into the air.
So yeah,
And-
teleportation makes your vocal cords disperse into the air in such
Yeah.
a way that you can like give a final like meow. I'm out of here.
I
I'm outta
hope
here.
that
I'm
the
going
rest
to the
of
place that no one talks about and is very much real.
yeah. I always hope the rest of the film you just occasionally hear this like meow like echo from
Yeah.
beyond.
Yeah, it's like a haunt. It's a good old
Yeah.
haunt. By the way, because of how bare bones the '86 version is,
Mm.
when you look back at the events and you see, Jeff Goldblum or Brundle basically is now a dead Brundle-Fly / telepod.
Look, if you haven't seen it, in one sentence, he makes the teleportation device works, but a fly flies in. It blends their DNA. He slowly turns into a weird mix of man and fly. At first, he's addicted to the feeling of it. It feels great. Finally, it becomes a King Kong scenario where he knows it's bad. He fears for what his mind will become, but at the same time, he has super strength and shit, and he's obsessed with capturing Gina Davis because she's pregnant with his fly child. And in moments of humanity, he says, you got to kill me. But in moments of fly-manity, he says, I want the baby to exist. I want the fly baby to exist. And her ex-boyfriend, Stathis, which
Yes.
is a whole other thing.
Who's a
Stathis
terrible
Moran.
person.
But his name is Stathis.
Yeah.
Comes back with a shotgun and gets injured by fighting the fly, but finally together they kill the fly.
Injured. Small. That's a.
Well, I didn't want to
understatement.
steal all the choice moments,
His
but I wanted people who
legs
hadn't
are gone,
seen it
yeah.
to realize how fucking simple it is.
Right.
Guy
Yeah.
becomes a fly, they kill him because that's gross.
Because
the end.
he's
Yeah.
unnatural,
There's-
et cetera, or whatever. My point just being that at the end, because they strip everything away and it's such a closed system for the movie, and it
Yeah.
works because there's only really 3 characters. There's auxiliary characters, including David Cronenberg playing the gynecologist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Of course he'd play a gynecologist.
Yeah, but Ronnie and Stathis are absolutely going to jail for murder after this all ends.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I know that doesn't happen in The Fly 2, which is the sequel about
Yeah.
the son of Brundle-Fly. But it's just hilarious to me is that they totally just killed a guy. Even though,
Yeah.
like, there's some cop that, like, in plain clothes just arrives and is basically just, like, trying to do detective. And he's like, so that's when he turned into a telepod.
Yeah. Well, oh yeah.
This
I
is all
actually-
highly suspect. I'm pretty sure you just murdered and, like, put him in a blender or something.
That also is very. I couldn't believe how this Cronenberg movie got, in the sense that if you followed his whole career, especially up to Existence, I love Existence, by the way. The fact that the topper in this is the fact that the guy who's melded with the fly accidentally gets the telepod gets triggered while he's halfway in and halfway out, and the door is cracked. So instead, it absorbs itself and it melds the human fly hybrid man with the telepod itself. So he
It's so
becomes
gnarly.
a nightmare of like flesh and wires and shit. And I'm just like, Cronenberg is such a specific kid I knew in junior high. I know exactly what he's like, that he's into all this shit. Eli Roth has the same kind of crazy eyes. I'm like, yeah, I know this guy. He hangs out in a particular section of the comic book store talking about body horror exclusively. It's all he's into. And he masturbates 9 times a day. And he doesn't see the connection between those things, but I do. I do.
How does how are women characters treated in his other films? I've been trying to think about it, because Gina Davis in this, like, she's just going from one abusive boyfriend to the next.
Who? Veronica
going between-
Quaife? Can I just point out in the credits, her last name is Quaife, Quaif. Yes.
Good God.
Veronica Quaife. Yeah, it's a very regressive movie if you're tracking it from like a 2019 perspective. It's
Well,
crazy date rapey and all that stuff.
I would say it's even from a 1986 perspective. It's like the guy her editor ex-boyfriend is trash. He's a trash can.
Yeah, that's true.
And he breaks into her apartment and showers, and he's like obsessive and weird. And then he's like dies a hero at the end. And it's weird because she just kind of goes back to him when Brundle-Fly is getting too intense.
Well, she goes to him not for romantic love, but literally for physical help. Like,
and then
this
he
is
has
happening.
then he has to save her in the end.
He does, yeah.
It left a bad taste in my mouth because it was like, come on, have Gina Davis fucking figure this out.
Speaking of
She's
bad
Gina
taste in your
Davis.
mouth, we did reference his injury, which we should, I think, explicate, which is that the Brundle-Fly vomits on his clenched fist, which dissolves it down to the
That
bone.
was hardcore.
That was rad. And then even worse, vomits similar stomach acid type thing onto his ankle and gently pulls his foot off of his leg in a way that is truly, it looks painful.
It does.
It's like Abe was saying, it doesn't make you feel fear like the rush of adrenaline that accompanies fight or flight. It makes you just think, oh, that's gotta hurt. That's the kind of horror this is.
The actor's
that
kinda
looks
hungry.
rough.
You know, like you want pasta.
You want pasta when you watch The Fly? You want to just eat like a sloppy
Slurp.
plate
Is
of
that not how
Alfredo?
you eat pasta? By corrosively vomiting onto your plate and then regurgitating it up?
Yeah, I love the recurring. I just think very much like Metamorphosis, which I honestly feel like David Cronenberg would not be surprised to hear it compared to Metamorphosis and probably had it in mind. It is an interesting idea, the introduction of this genre into mainstream film, where it's just the idea. And I'll have you know, Jacob's Ladder does feature a lot of body horror dream sequences that you don't remember
That's
when
true.
you think
I
back
forgot
on
about
it.
But
Cronenberg's obsessed with this idea of like, what if your body was not your body? That would be scary. And I'm glad someone's doing it. It's interesting to me. I'm glad the subgenre exists.
I think this movie should have been made in the 2000s because you know what, this movie, watching it again, I realized it's a good kind of response to is superhero movies. It's Spider-Man. He gets fly DNA in him, which gives him the power of gymnastics.
Yep.
And it's like a superhero origin story.
It's kind of like
and then
Split
it goes
if he could
horribly
survive.
wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like a spoof on Spider-Man. It's
right. I actually wrote that down too because we've seen like several Spider-Man origin sequences, and obviously Spider-Man, in order to be Spider-Man, needs to swing from tall buildings and fight super foes. But I love how subtle, like the subtle, slow reveal of his oncoming powers is so effective in this because he's just like, he's getting amped up. He's just kind of like got a zest for life.
He loves
and
eating
before you know
sugar.
it,
He feels like he's on cocaine all the time.
yeah, he's
essentially.
popping his shirt off all the time and he's cut.
Yeah.
And
Hey, just pop that top off.
yeah, and then he's
Goldblum.
doing gymnastics, and it's like the way they shoot the gymnastics. It's clearly just like they got a good gymnast to come in and do some.
Oh yeah, that was not
sweet-ass
Jeff.
twirls.
Yeah.
I know
What if it
nothing about
was?
gymnastics, but
I'm hoping Jeff Goldblum was doing like full 720 backflips on the set of The Fly.
and it's equally as effective to me than CG Spider-Man, yelling "woo" as he goes across like the fucking New York streets.
Skyline. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they both have their place. I'm not trying to
I
say
tweeted
one's over the other, but
the first thing I did when the credits started to roll is I tweeted, and I want to say this on the record because I stand by it. I can't stop thinking about it. Darkman versus The Fly, Brundle-Fly specifically, would be the fucking best graphic novel. Like I would collect that graphic novel
That's pretty
instantly.
dope.
Yeah. If for people who don't know, Darkman is the Sam Raimi precursor to. There was this funny period before we had CG and before Marvel and DC were giving away rights to things that outside of Batman and Superman, directors who grew up loving comic books would just make something up or take a shitty property like The Phantom from the 30s or The Shadow and try to make it a real superhero movie for like the 80s, 90s era. It never fucking worked out. But Sam Raimi made Darkman, and it's one of the better ones from that weird, like, random superhero era. And the Darkman should fucking fight the Fly. I don't know why, but there's
100%.
something right about that. Yeah.
Hell yeah, I like that. I like how your brain works, Swaim.
And I also think it's worth pointing out that there is truly a very affecting dialogue in this screenplay. There's also dialogue that makes me wonder about Cronenberg's state of mind, but there's other dialogue that I'm like, that's very there. It's poignant, it's insightful, it's creepy in a way I haven't experienced before.
The "I'll hurt you if you stay" scene is great.
That's what I mean. Is there's stuff that really actually punched me in the heart, like made me sad. When he says, "You got to have the baby." It's just, you got to have the baby. That's why I'm doing this. You're going to have the baby. And she goes, "I can't have the baby. I can't have the baby. I'll kill it myself if I have to." And he goes, "Too bad. Too bad." That like broke my heart. That was a
Right.
really good scene.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I do want to discuss Gina Davis's pillow talk, which was, "I just want to eat you up. That's why old ladies pinch babies' cheeks. The flesh makes you crazy." To which Jeff Goldblum should have stood up and went, "I'm sorry. What did you just say to me? What the fuck did you just say?"
That's and vice versa though. That's what gives it the
Yeah.
Cronenberg feel. Only in Cronenberg world do adults accept that talk from other adults. Because he says to her, she goes, "What went wrong?" "I think I believe it turned the baboon inside out." "Why?" "It must be my fault." "Why?" "Because computers are dumb. They only do what you tell them. I don't
Yes.
know enough about the flesh. I will have to learn about the flesh." And at that point again, Gina Davis should go, "All right, so long.
So I'm gonna head out.
I'm going to leave this warehouse now."
Yeah. Because you're lazy with your articles.
Yeah.
Because you're calling it the flesh.
I need to learn about the flesh. Why does it have to be the? You could have just said learn about flesh.
You could have said it, skin, just anything. But now here we are.
Now here we are.
Did you guys
Concerning
actually
the,
watch the it's on the DVD as well. I assume it's on the Blu-ray. It's also on YouTube, the infamous cat monkey scene that they cut. Did you guys watch that?
No,
No.
but from the cat/monkey, I have an idea of what it could be.
Does he put? Yeah.
Well, basically what it is it's there's a deleted scene where basically Brundle-Fly fuses a cat and the baboon, the same baboon, and just to see what happens, because he's like learning so what happens with hybrids. So it's just like a logical like iteration of his mental state of like, so is this what's going to happen to me? And he then beats it to death with a lead pipe because
Jesus.
it's like, kill me.
Because it's a monster.
They screened it and fairly early on. And I thought that this is a really good producer. So there's a producer named one of the producers of the film, Stuart Kornfeld, felt that the audience like didn't like it. They obviously didn't after the test screening. And his reason why is that there's no turning back for Seth at that point, and they lost all sympathy because, quote, "If you beat an animal to death, even a monkey cat, your audience is not going to be interested in your problems anymore."
They aren't wrong.
They aren't
That's so
wrong
funny.
because it's like hideously like screaming like ah,
Yeah.
and it's got shrill screams. It's got multiple mouths.
So
and
look
like
that
one of
up.
them is a howling cat, and one of them is
a monkey.
screaming baboon. And there was a scripted but never filmed segment that ends it also that a homeless lady is basically
alley.
screaming after she finds Brundle-Fly feeding out of an open dumpster.
Yeah.
And then he grabs her, disintegrates her face with vomit drop, which is I'm
Yeah.
so glad they didn't do that scene because it comes as such a surprise in
When
the
he does
actual
it to
edit
the
now
guy- to
that his
Stathis.
vomit is horrifying.
Yeah.
And then after he finishes feeding on the woman's corpse, and this is kind of what we're talking about with like psychological terror versus like body horror, there's a moment that I'm sure would have been lovely to film, which is Brundle-Fly's humanity emerges for just a moment, and this is all scripted.
He reacts
just
as
enough
you
for
would
him
if
to
you
contemplate-
realized you did that.
Yeah, and then he goes back to business.
Wow.
That would be a great scene where he's
That
got
is great
holding the
psych
stump
horror.
of an old lady,
And then suddenly you
realizes,
see his
"What am I
eyes
doing?"
clear and starts to hyperventilate and go, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" And then it goes back to being
And then
a
it goes
fly.
back. Yeah.
That's pretty
creepy.
great.
Yeah,
But they chose not to do it for the same reason that they cut the cat monkey sequence. Is that
it's
they
just
feel like
too.
they wanted to
rough.
go whole hog on like this
Right.
bittersweet kind of ending for Brundle-Fly, like exactly the reason that we like that.
Well, he
scenes
begs
where
for
he's
death,
basically
so
going,
you
like,
imagine that he is somewhat human deep inside because he
Deep
wants
inside,
to die. Yeah.
because that makes him sympathetic. It's
Yeah.
not just an absolute.
He's King Kong. By the end, it's
Yeah.
King Kong
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's interesting that I just thought the way they handled Jeff Goldblum Seth Brundle before he becomes the Fly, it became impossible for me to tell when he became a dick. Like when he goes to the bar and does the arm wrestle and he's like, "And if I win, I get to take your girlfriend home." Like treating the woman like, and then he does it and she's down for it. Like, "You, chick in this bar, you're a prostitute. I'm strong. I'm going to win you and you're going to go fuck me in my warehouse." And she's like, "Okay." And,
Yeah.
Women, it's not a great representation in this film.
and it's hard to tell how much of that is Seth. Because even in the opening image with Gina Davis, he's a creep. It's hard to tell how much is the Fly and how much he's just an asshole. Because he
He's got,
clearly
like-
invented teleportation to fuck chicks. That's that's my takeaway from the arc of the movie. He in a very high pressure way is like, "Hey, you're a woman. Come back to my warehouse. I invented teleportation. Doesn't that make you horny?" He does it with Gina Davis, and then he does it with random lady that he wins
You
through
can't-
arm wrestling.
You can't blame him because Gina Davis does seem pretty horny
It's
for the
impressive.
teleportation at the beginning.
It's very impressive.
Yeah.
I get it.
She's wet for science. Like she's immediately like into it.
Gina
You know that
Davis
they
is
were
wet for
dating,
news,
right?
for actionable news. She cares about it very much. Oh, at that time?
At the time, in fact, they were looking for Jennifer Jason Leigh and Laura Dern were both considered for Veronica. The producers wanted an unknown, which is what Gina Davis was at this point.
Yeah.
And Goldblum suggested Gina Davis, and then
Well, there you go.
once she read, Cronenberg was like, "Yeah, that's the one."
Yeah. So, just on a sheer script level, though, I just don't get some of it. Or
Well,
she's just met this man. She goes back to his house,
Oh,
which
yeah.
turns out to be an abandoned warehouse. The first thing he does is play piano, and she goes, I forget what oh no, she tries to leave. She literally tries to leave. She goes,
Yes.
"Well, that's about that. I'm going to leave." And he goes, No, it's too late. You've already seen the pods. I can't let you leave here alive." You would run out of the fucking room at that point. Anyone
I mean-
would.
Yeah.
I really need to stress, I don't think this is a well-written movie.
I think there
it's
are
the writer
moments.
of Dragonheart and Psycho 3, by the way.
Hey, Dragonheart fucking rules.
But like one of the things
Get the fuck
Sure.
out.
one of the things that struck me was his revelation about the flesh and the computer. Do you remember what the revelation is? Gina Davis gives that pillow talk, and he does a Independence Day, a cold moment, and he tells her, he's like, "This is it. The computer isn't crazy for the flesh.
That's right.
So I have to teach it to be crazy for the flesh."
He says the reason
it's like,
it's a breakthrough like House would have, where he's like, "Of course, the computer's
Yeah.
not teleporting correctly because I haven't taught it the poetry of being crazy for the flesh." And you're
Right.
like, "What the fuck is that supposed to be?"
From what I can tell, he means I haven't programmed it to figure this out yet. And it's like, yeah, no shit. I thought the problem was how.
It's a computer
Like he's
program.
like, "Oh,
yeah.
I got it. I type things into the computer and it'll change the computer." And it's like, we're really at that? Like we're
Yeah.
I
we're
thought it
that
was
far
that
behind in the
I-
revelation?
I thought it was that he had to model, because it comes about because they eat a steak, and they talk about how a steak is just dead flesh, but the experience is so much more complex than just a hunk of dead flesh. And I understand that in a poetic sense, but in a scientific sense, there's no way to make it make sense.
There's no way.
From that,
That's
he's like,
sci-fi.
oh, I need to program the telepod to lust for flesh in the way a man enjoys a steak.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what does that mean on a programming level? What are
'Cause
you
in the end,
talking
it's-
about?
Yeah,
This
it's
is-
like
I
ex
think-
machina problems. It's any problem with intelligence of computers. You know, it's like, oh, I just have to teach it to be sentient. Like,
This
yeah,
is-
and you're like, oh, it's just that. Oh,
so
okay,
it's
go
like,
ahead.
so they're gonna, of course,
Yeah.
they're gonna hyperdrive their way out of that problem.
Right.
I wouldn't say that Star Trek on in mass is a poorly written, like franchise just because it just says like, well, how does it go faster than light? They have a thing. It's called hyperspace.
This is where I
It's called
would
Faster
credit-
Light. Yeah.
This is where I think the 1958 film is so much better because his lab in that is all cheesy 50s science shit, much like this one, it's all cheesy 80s science shit, where it's like neither have figured out how computers actually
Are
work.
ultimately going to work in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, but the difference is the 1958 Fly doesn't try. They're just like, it's a machine.
That's
And like
that's a
he
fair-
pulls a switch.
Yeah.
It's almost more
it-
defensible. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it-
immediately more defensible because like you're not opening up the questions that you can't answer,
Yeah.
which a
And it
good film
doesn't-
opens up questions, but then things that aren't answerable, it doesn't try to answer them. But it's
Right.
an exercise in that's my broader point is it's an exercise in look at this fucking. We got this guy Chris Wallace. He made Gremlins, and he fucking look at what he can do. Look at this
Yeah.
fucking guy and his team of designers.
When they say do an
look at how
R-rated
cool they are.
version, it's
That's what this
pretty
movie
intense.
is.
Yeah.
So
But I also
staging
think-
it as a simple, just basic moral play that has very few moving parts is
Yeah.
not a digression to me from
It's gross King
what makes
Kong.
the film good.
It's gross King Kong.
It's
But-
gross King Kong. That's fine.
See, I compare it to like Fantasia, where Fantasia is a celebration of animation. This is a kind of a celebration of gross practical effects. But like Fantasia, I don't really find the story interesting, and I don't feel the need to watch it that much.
I guess, but I would argue
Fair.
that Cronenberg is the right person to have here, and it is special that, I understand that the effects team deserves the lion's share of the credit, and I see the weakness in writing. But in the way that Lynch has the pure power to create a disturbing image I never thought of before, and I don't know what it means, but you got me. I'm disturbed. I think Cronenberg has the ability to create. So, there's a moment in Event Horizon, which I consider a very mediocre film, where
It's
the
actually
guy,
bad.
where the boy gets ejected into space, and the devil briefly lets him become himself again so that he can beg his mom, like, Mommy, don't send me into space. And I'm like, okay, that one moment, there's something about it. I get it has this tragic punch that is undeniable. And I think Cronenberg writes maddening dialogue that makes no sense in any lens, and is weird and makes it seem like he might be a creep in real life. But there are these moments of the poignancy, like I said, the too bad moment, where I'm like, that's not just effects. There's some directorial skill there. And I do think Cronenberg is, I don't know, a 7.5 of a director, or maybe a 7.
I like his other movies way better.
I know
than
what you mean.
this. It's
yeah,
not about Cronenberg.
History
I don't
of
think.
Violence makes a whole lot more sense than this. There are lines where you wonder what human mind wrote this and thought, other humans say this. This is the type of thing a human would say. like when he says, your problem is you think you woke me up about the flesh, but you can't see past society's sick gray line of what the flesh is. I'm not talking about sexual penetration beyond the veil of the flesh. Dive deep or drink not from the plasma pool. And I think David Cronenberg thinks that sentence makes sense, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just weird, dude. You're just outing yourself as a fucking weirdo. You're like, that's what a scientist would say. The scientist would say, "Oh, I haven't made the computer crazy enough for the flesh."
Isn't
That's
it
how
a reference to
programmers
the Drink Deep of the Pyrenean Spring?
Yeah, the drink deep thing, yes. My main thing is that David Cronenberg thinks that humans walk around saying the phrase "the flesh" a lot more than they do.
Yes.
People don't use the phrase "the flesh" that much at all. It
But, yeah.
doesn't come up very
But
much.
Maybe
your comment's
we
still
should.
true. It's
Yeah.
true. But I don't know. Just as a last ditch effort, like I'm not saying it's good writing. I'm just saying that it makes sense that a detached scientist would talk that way.
I guess.
He's
Yeah.
weird. He's a
He
weird
also doesn't
guy.
want to survive as a chemo patient, which I think is weirdly insulting to like people who've beaten cancer.
Right.
I won't be another tumorous bore sitting in the hospital whining about my
Yeah.
hair falling out. Whining? My aunt beat cancer. Excuse me. Fuck you, sir. Her hair fell out. Who cares?
And I think you
Like,
should
fuck
think
you.
that about his character. I don't think that necessarily means that Cronenberg thinks that. I think Cronenberg is
Okay.
actually the opposite. He's saying, look at this like flawed individual.
Yeah, I don't think Goldblum's definitely not the hero from the
No,
start. I
no,
don't think.
definitely not.
I don't think I never found him charming.
But
in
he's
this.
sympathetic in moments. There's moments where you feel
Yeah.
bad that this horrible thing is happening to anyone. Doesn't matter who it is. It's so
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's sympathetic when he can say, "You have to leave now and never come back here. If you come back here, I'll hurt you." Have you ever heard of insect politics? Neither have I. I'd love to be the first insect politician making deals, thinking reasonably, but I'm not. I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man, and I loved it, but now the dream is over and the insect is awake. I'll hurt you if you stay.
I
It's-
love that scene.
It's amazing to me that he can write such good moments and then in other moments writes dialogue that no human would ever say. I guess he's just
Yes.
uneven. Is what
Yeah,
I'm getting
I
at.
think it's just fair to say it's not everyone's cup of tea. You know, like I don't know. He's not the greatest writer, but I don't know what that even means. You know.
Hmm.
I think
like-
he's writing exactly what he means to. I just
Yeah.
think he's a weird fella.
He's a weird fella. That's the best way to say it, I'd say.
Yeah.
He's just a weird fella.
Well, plus I do love that the whole movie, like a lot of good early movies in directors who have a strong vision, their career they tend to make at least one movie that's a metaphor for how they make movies. Like what's his name just did it with House that Jack Built, Lars von Trier. I realized watching this time, it's Cronenberg writing about what he is and how he likes to make movies. He's gonna take disparate elements that have already existed and honor the tradition of filmmaking, but also combine them in a new grotesque way that he's going to shove into your face because he finds it interesting and he hopes you do too. And there's a lot of little subtle nods throughout the movie to the idea that I think Cronenberg is Seth. Or at least I think The Fly to
Yeah.
Cronenberg
I wonder if he knows gymnastics.
is a movie about filmmaking and the filmmaking process, at least in part. Teaching the technology, i.e. the effects team, to summon the horrific otherworldly vision that's in his head. And he's the manager of it all.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I did want to point out something that I found out in my research about this film that really makes me enthusiastically on the side of Chris Wallace's Incorporate, the group that made this. So they could have made Goonies, or not Goonies, they could have made Gremlins too,
Uh-huh.
and they chose not to. In fact, they chose a lower budget with more restrictive time restraints and just limitations all around. And it's like a group of like, I don't know how many people, but I assume it's like 10 to 20 or something like that. They chose to do this film after all of those things. And when they were asked, why did you do that? Because obviously there's a lot of interviews with them because they got the Academy Award, and their response, or Chris Wallace's response, was, it just seemed like we'd already done Gremlins. we wanted to do the next cool, challenging thing, and this
That
was
makes
it.
sense for an effects team. Like,
And
you,
yeah.
Dave, you and Tom
it's so
have
cool
the
to me.
Tremors series, and it's so interesting to track all the Tremors films through the point of view of the team of people who are genuinely excited to make new kinds of tremors or figure out how, without CG, you make a tunnel hump
Right.
appear in the ground.
Yeah.
And then when they finally cave because of budget and do go CG, but what else remains practical? I love looking at films through the lens of the practical effects team.
For
It's
sure.
very
And I
Yeah.
get that with what's his name? Chris Wallace.
Chris
Yeah.
Wallace.
Can you like I getting off of Gremlins 2 of just like, hey, you want to make the same puppet 50 times, but like one of them's a lady puppet and one of them's
one
like
of them's Smurfette.
They're like, no.
yeah,
I
and
want
one
to
of
do
them
the
has
thing
like
where I have to
glasses.
create 7 unique stages of transformation
Oh,
yeah.
for
dude.
a fly human.
Brundle-Fly goes through wildly different phases. They worked their asses off.
Yeah,
for
there's
the effects in this
7,
film,
and they
yeah.
each have very specific. And when you start getting to 5, 6, 7, like with the full bodysuit,
And
like
the
it takes
topper.
like pounds and pounds of, like Goldblum had
Yeah.
to deal with that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's like a
hours
whole
of makeup.
it's like a whole Godzilla franchise in one film, which by the way is exactly 90 minutes long. Like it's not even a long movie. But they fit in. They're like he's going to go from human to fly hands to fly skin to completely fly to his joints turn backwards and his head explodes and a fly head comes out to mecha robot abomination fly. And you're like, the last one's a topper. You didn't even have to do that to win the Academy Award probably, and you did. You
They had-
melded him with the robot for no reason.
They
at
had
the end.
two. They had 2 names for that version. One was Brundle Booth.
Brundle Booth, Brundle
The other one is the crew used on set called him Brundle Thing for obvious reasons.
Sure.
Because it's like a thing. The thing.
Well, it should have been a pod. It's
it should have
Brundle
been a
Pod,
pun,
but
yeah.
whatever.
they're good. They're good with flesh. They're not.
Hey,
good
they're
with
not
words.
writers. Yeah, they're carvers of the flesh and
Yeah.
flowers of the flesh.
They're flowers. They're the flowers, baby. Yeah.
yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, it was the Veronica ripping off Seth's jaw in the final transformation sequence. That whole final transformation sequence and like the ripping away of his flesh, human flesh, just
Stop
to be.
saying flesh.
It took 2 weeks
Flesh.
to film.
2 weeks.
Damn.
2 weeks because things
Of
went
the part
wrong.
where he totally like essentially his skin does slough off and he's
Yeah.
a fly underneath. The final
And-
stage.
Yeah, it took that much time, and Wallace talks about how often things were like 80 to 90% ready when they were brought onto set because they were just constantly going super super fast,
Sure.
and they just had to like make it work because of the shooting schedule, and like he still stands by it. He's still like, yeah, it was good.
Better be proud of it.
I'm
It's
proud of
great
a lot of it,
accomplishment.
but like there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that if we had more time, which is like I just think
That's a
like,
true craftsman.
That's a true
craftsman's
craftsman,
always going to
exactly.
say, if I could do it again, I'd do it better, but whatever.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I think I did a great job with the time that I was given. You know.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so great. It's just so fucking great.
I was bummed about his jaw getting ripped off because the funniest thing to me was that he kept becoming this monster, but he still sounded like Jeff Goldblum.
Right.
And then
Which
you're like,
was
"Shut him
hilarious to
up."
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted it to be this like hideous creature, but he still got that charming Jeff Goldblum voice the whole time.
I'm becoming a
Yeah.
fly. You're like, wow, your vocal cords have maintained really well throughout this
Imagine-
process.
Imagine a remake of this where a sound designer got to design with the same kind of
Just take the waveforms
Ambition.
and add effects and shit to
with
it.
like
yeah.
stages of
Yeah.
digital effects that they could put on.
Oh,
to
they
the
could do a
sounds.
great super invasive remaster of this, and it would be appropriate to mutate this film into a different film. Like I would like the Fly remaster that fucked with it. That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up. This is last call for final Fly thoughts.
My final Fly thought is
Yes, please.
people should just watch the original.
Only? You don't
yeah,
think
well,
this is
okay.
worth watching?
this is why I kept bringing up the originals, because I watched this version first, the 1980, what is it, 6. And I remember being like, oh, that was a lot of fun. And then you go back and you watch the original, and it's like watching the Psycho remake before Psycho to me, where it's like, okay, this is the version that's really good.
This is why it's a phenomenon or notable.
Yeah. Like, this is the story. This is the better story of this premise.
I would have pegged you for a huge Cronenberg guy.
I don't mind Cronenberg. I love the effects, but
yeah.
I think it needs to be more than that. I think about like The Thing, where The Thing has a gnarly fucking practical effects. I love practical effects, but it also has great characters and like a fun story, and it has a psychological aspect of paranoia. Whereas this is just gross effect after gross effect, and I don't get much from the characters or story. So.
But it also has an 80s, 90s computer at an Arctic research station able to immediately accurately predict the spread of a pandemic, which makes so little sense that it almost ruins the movie. Yeah, when Brimley is looking at the computer and he just hits a couple buttons on the keyboard and it goes, at this rate, everyone on Earth will be a thing in 48 hours. And you're like, how the fuck would you know that, Arctic research computer? That makes no fucking sense whatsoever.
It's such a weird thing to give Wilford Brimley.
Yeah.
But I guess my ultimate thought on this is that no matter what era it's made, like if a movie is just effects, then it's inferior to me.
Okay.
Like whether it's CGI or practical effects, like I can like the effects, but
if you strip away the effects, the 1986 Fly is a very unambitious, not that impressive film. It is. But I would argue that they went into it knowing that. They almost didn't make too much movie because they didn't want to get in the way of the effects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I accept it as a choice.
Yeah, I don't think I think it was on purpose.
But man, you got me. Like, I want to go watch the 50s one now. Right after we hang up. Yeah. But you've burned me before.
Yeah, he does that.
Well, Dave is so full of joy. You'll like a movie and I'll watch it and I'd be like, you are too charitable. Fuck these people. But I just think you're able to suck the joy out of more things than I am.
Thank you.
A broader range of things. The flesh, the dance of the flesh and the love of the flesh.
It's all about the flesh.
That's what we all say
all
about
the
Dave.
flesh.
He loves that flesh.
Yeah. So I'm going to say thanks again to Aaron Bouton, or in case this is how it's pronounced, Aaron Bouton. There's no real way to tell just from the spelling. But thank you, person, ma'am or sir, or however you identify. Maybe you're a fly, and that's why you suggested this movie. Yeah. But we really appreciate it. As Off Hours has gone on hiatus, and we're still trying to keep Small Beans going, all the people who join at the Pick the Flick tier are very greatly appreciated. And we have some more picked flicks coming up soon, which means it's kind of fun because you get to hear us talk about movies that aren't just the Coen brothers movies or movies you'd expect us to talk about, but a wider range of interesting films. And thanks again to Dave.
Thank you for having me.
From what I consider our sister feed. Let's, now that we got the tech side figured out. Oh yeah, full disclosure, Dave was very patient for half an hour while I figured out how to make this all work from San Francisco.
I enjoyed our conversation.
Good. That's great.
I was having a nice time.
Me too. I just, I was hoping after I moved up here that I'd talk to everyone even more often on streams and on the phone and stuff. So it's nice to hear that that's not annoying.
No.
Yeah.
You're
man.
lovely.
You're lovely.
Aww.
Let's just talk sometime when we're not being recorded. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And how about that Doc Garby with all those bad fan arts? Those are cool
it's
too.
So good.
Yeah, he's great. All right. Dave, please plug your pluggables in the slim chance that someone doesn't know Gamefully Unemployed.
Right. Yeah, I have we have a sister podcast network with Tom Ryman called Gamefully Unemployed. You can check us out at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We have exclusive podcasts on there. It's all on there. Just go there
Yeah.
and you'll get a bunch of information about us.
I found myself thinking of Seth Brundle much the way that you guys think of Agent Mulder in this walkthrough. Like, I was using the same analytical tools you apply to Fox Mulder as a maniac. A great exclusive show over at Gainfully Unemployed.
It's one of my
Thank you.
favorites.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great idea. You guys are hilarious.
Yeah. It's hella fun. All right. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Abe,
Okay.
love you,
Nothing.
buddy.
Yeah, you get nothing from me.
Talk soon. I'm going to stop recording now. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.